Hello, and welcome to the Permission to Breathe podcast, a transformative space dedicated to providing a sanctuary where you can inhale deeply and exhale freely, embracing your grief journey unapologetically. I am your host, Dr. Tammy Isaac, here with you every Monday to offer comfort, guidance, and hope. Together we'll navigate this path, finding moments to pause, reflect, and breathe. Let's begin this journey side by side. Today's episode is sponsored by Let the Church Grieve by Dr. Tammy Isaac, a compelling book that explores the often overlooked subject of grief within spiritual communities. Dr. Isaac combines personal antidotes with theological insights, providing a compassionate framework for understanding and addressing grief collectively. This book emphasizes the need for spiritual leaders to create safe spaces for mourning and guides congregations through the grieving process with faith and empathy. It's a must-read for anyone looking to support those experiencing grief within their spiritual communities. Grab your copy of Let the Church Grieve at www.drtammyisaac.com today and begin the journey towards healing and growth. Grief has a way of taking our breath away, leaving us feeling suffocated by loss and overwhelmed by our emotions. But what if I told you that the very thing we often lose control of, the simple act of breathing, could also be a key to navigating the waves of sorrow? In this episode titled The Interplay of Grief and Breathing, we will explore how our breath not only sustains our physical, but also serves as a pathway to healing emotionally and spiritually. Whether you're mourning the loss of a loved one or facing a major challenge in life or feeling stuck in sadness, today's conversation will offer you practical tools to breathe through your grief one moment at a time. So, wherever you are, take a deep breath with me. And let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to the Permission to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tammy Isaac. On today's episode, we're going to explore, the deep connections between life's most challenging moments and the breath that sustains us through it all. So our topic today is the interplay of grief and breathing. So the interplay of grief and breathing is symbolic, but it is also very therapeutic. That's why a lot of people do a lot of deep breathing exercises, and especially when they're doing meditation, it helps release a lot of stress. And we'll talk more about that, but it's very therapeutic, which we'll learn today. And also at its core, grief often brings about a sense of suffocation, right? It's like this type of emotional weight that can feel like it's pressing on our chest and making it hard to breathe. So just kind of imagine somebody taking a 50-pound or 100-pound weight and putting it on your chest, and you're still alive, but you're exerting yourself to the extreme, trying to get your air to flow through your lungs and through your body, because there's a blockage now and there's barely any room for it to come out. So now our stress levels are high. We have anxiety going on, and all of this exertion is happening in our body that is making it hard and becomes very overwhelmed and zaps us of our energy that eventually will stop breathing. And this is what grief can do if we don't learn how to use breathing to help us through some of these challenging moments, because grief does have that effect of bringing anxiety and panic attacks, which causes us to limit our breathing. Breathing plays a significant role in the process of grieving because it is both a physiological necessity and it is a metaphor for navigating our emotional hardships. Breathing is one of the few autonomic processes that we can consciously control. You know, many of us like to control everything, but we really can't. But breathing is one of the things that we can consciously control, which gives us a powerful tool for coping with our grief. So as you experience deep emotional pain, intentional breath work becomes a way that you can reclaim control when everything feels uncertain. And so that's how we can see that breathing is very therapeutic, because it can return us into a very calm and peaceful state when we are heightened in our anxiety and feel like everything is topsy-turvy, right? So, the importance of breathing during grief can be understood in several levels, and I want to share 5 of those levels with us today. The first level that I want to share with you is the physical regulation, which is managing stress and anxiety. So, grief can throw the body into a state of hypoarousal, known as the fight or flight response. And this will increase our heart rate, our muscle tensions, and then we begin to have shallow breathing. This can feel very, very overwhelming and cause us to feel out of control. Remember, I said we can control things a little bit better when we do our deep breathing. And so when we're not breathing and we are in a state of hypoarousalness, then we are now out of control. And what makes it worse is I am coupling this increased heart rate and muscle tension and my shallow breathing with my sorrow and my despair, with my grief. So it's important that we take or be very intentional when it comes to deep breathing, because deep breathing will signal to our brain that it's safe to relax, right? And when the brain gets that signal, there are 3 things that signal will do for you. The first one is that it will activate the parasympathetic nervous system, also known as the rest and digest system. So your parasympathetic nervous system is a network of nerves that relaxes your body after periods of stress or danger. What it does is counteract the effects of stress and panic. And it takes you being very intentional about your breathing for that signal to resonate, and allow your nervous system to understand that it is safe. So I use an example because I remember I was in a very dangerous situation one morning. I used to do CrossFit, and it was on the other side of town. So I had to leave home at 4 a.m. to get there at 5. And on the road, there was this guy, very dangerous, just running into all of our cars and, had a gun. So, me and the other cars were like collaborating with each other, like calling 911 and just making sure each one of us were okay on the road and trying to figure out ways to get away from this person. And I did make it to the gym safe. But when I got there, this is where I began to understand the parasympathetic nervous system is, though I was in a place that I was safe and I was with at the gym with the other team, other members of the gym, even after being there for a while, I was still feeling anxious and overwhelmed and worked up and very shaky. That would have been a very good time for me to sit and do some breathing exercises, because my mind had not received the signal that I was safe, even though I was in a place that I knew was safe. Because I've been there before. I was around people. I knew the doors were locked. We were on the inside, but I still was feeling the effects of it, because usually it takes a while for that to transition through your system. So it really wasn't healthy for me to go in there and then start working out. And actually I end up not working out because I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't get myself together. And when I tried to work out, I just could not focus. And so it's important that we are intentional about our breathing, so that breathing can activate our parasympathetic nervous system to give our brain the signal that say that we're safe and that your body can start to relax relax and release you of the stressors, the muscle tension, the high heart rate, and that your breathing can regulate back to a normal flow. Here's the second thing. It also lowers your blood pressure, right? When we are intentional about our deep breathing, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, but it also lowers our blood pressure and our heart rate. So helping the body return to a state of equilibrium when we are breathing is also an important thing. So me going through that experience really would have helped for me to sit down and breathe through the process so that my blood pressure could go down, my heart rate could slow down, I can get my breathing back in balance. When we think about lowering our blood pressure and relating that to our intentional deep breathing, some studies have found that breathing exercises can lower our blood pressure as much as medication. So versus having medication for our blood pressure, we could do breathing exercise that can also help for in some instances. I remember somebody was sharing with me one day that their blood pressure was very high. They was feeling not themselves and overwhelmed. And they went home, took their blood pressure medicine and laid down. And then when we kind of talked through the day and what she was experiencing, it was her grief. She was about to do something the next day that was her subconscious mind knew that it would involve encountering her information and places and things about her deceased loved one. And that was why her blood pressure was up. And when she was able to rest and relax and return back to her normal self, she was okay. So, one study also found that 30 breaths per day for 6 weeks lowered systolic blood pressure. Man, if I cannot take a pill and just do the breathing that I'm already doing to survive, to live every day, then let me just suck in this air. Right. So it activates when we do our physical regulation by managing stress and anxiety, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It lowers the blood pressure, and it also improves oxygen flow to the brain, which enhances clarity of thought and allows for more rational processing of emotions rather than reacting impulsively or feeling emotionally flooded. So when you're feeling overwhelmed with all these emotions, breathing helps bring in clarity. You ever wonder why when people are crying excessively and they're trying to get out what they're trying to say, but they can't because they're so overwhelmed, and they say, and somebody will tell them, breathe, 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 right? Because breathing allows for oxygen to go into the brain and give us clarity and calm us into a state where we're able to now say and release what we're trying to say. So it's important for us to learn to be intentional about our breathing, not just doing this, unaware breathing that we do every day, but we do need to pay attention to the breathing that we're doing and make sure that we're doing some deep breathing from the diaphragm. When we think about deep breathing techniques, there's one such as they call it the 4-7-8 breathing. So what you're going to do is inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. Or they also have something called the box breathing. And I have that at work that I use with people who may be overwhelmed. So you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you pause for 4 seconds. And these breathing exercises can be taught and used as tools for moments of intense grief and anxiety. The second level is emotional processing, which is allowing feelings to surface, right? We're so afraid of allowing our emotions and our feelings to rise up, right? but we have to allow them to do what they were created to do inside of us. So let's understand that grief is not linear. It is not a linear process, and it can fluctuate between moments of numbness, sadness, anger, and even relief. And often individuals will try to suppress or avoid our feelings because the emotional pain seems like too much to bear. And repressing grief can lead to more prolonged suffering. It can manifest a physical symptom like headaches, muscle tension, or sleep disturbances. So a lot of us are afraid to allow our emotions to flow because we're unaware of like what that looks like, what that's gonna feel like, what will people think or say about us. And then we do what is called suppressing that to avoid the feeling, but that doesn't help. And a lot of times we think, oh, I'm making it, but I'm telling you, in the long run, it will take an effect that will not be healthy on your emotional and mental state and even on your physical body, right? The headaches, the muscle tension. Have you ever had a tension or a muscle tension headache? It is the worst. I have had that and had to take medication. I mean, I thought I was having a migraine, but what I was experiencing was a muscle tension headache, and I had it for quite a period of time, and it was, I couldn't move. I couldn't see. My eyes were dilated. It was crazy. And I had to take this medication that would put me to sleep so I wouldn't feel the pain. And it all stemmed and sourced from stress. I was like, oh my God. So I'm telling us today that we need to allow our emotions to process and not repress them because they can manifest in physical symptoms in our body. So by focusing on breathing, we have three things, right? When we focus on our breathing, you and I will anchor ourselves in the present moment. When we focus on breathing, doing deep breathing, it helps to anchor us in the present moment, which allows for grief to emerge in a controlled and manageable way. We are fighting to not allow grief to manifest, but there's no way that you can do that. Grief demands our attention, and it's going to come. If it's going to come, and if there's nothing I can do about it, because I have allowed myself to love someone so dearly that I have now invited grief into my life because I no longer have them. If grief is going to come, if it has to be here, I want it to be able to manifest or emerge in a way that is controlled and manageable. Remember, I mentioned last week, Robert Braun, he says that always let your emotions testify, but never let them rule. This is me allowing my emotions to manifest, but in a controlled environment, that I don't allow my emotions to rule me, to make me act out in ways that I have no control or thought over. So as we breathe, it anchors us in the present moment, right? And then it allows grief to emerge in a controlled and manageable way. Okay. For those that are control freaks who want to control something, this is how you can do it by breathing. Here's the second thing. Breath work also helps to release emotional tension that is stored in the body, right? It is creating a safe space for the emotions to surface and be processed. It is important that we learn to do breathing and breath work so that we can get a lot of this tension that's inside of our bodies out. A lot of us don't know that we're even holding all these things in. Some of us like to go get massages. Those are good too. But there are also things that need to be worked out of us, not just through the massaging, but through our breathing, right? Breathing brings in that clarity, right? We talked about in the brain, so that we can be more stable in our thoughts and our actions and in our attitude. And then the tension that's been stored up in places in our body can now be able to move and have free ram and be loosened up, so that I won't be always walking around in a tense state, always have a crooked neck or a pain in my back or something like that. So it releases emotional tension. And the third one is each exhale that we do as we breathe in and we exhale out can become a release, which symbolizes letting go of the emotion, even if it's only temporary, and making the grief feel less overwhelming. So you can look at it in a way of I'm not I don't want my emotions to flow, so I'm just gonna suppress them or repress them. Well, what happens is, in this light, what we're doing is saying, I'm going to hold on to the pain. I'm going to hold on to the anxiety. I'm going to hold on to the anxiousness. I'm going to hold on to the deep sorrow. But what we're learning is that as we breathe in and exhale out, it symbolizes us allowing that emotion to take its course, to flow out of us, because that's really what emotions are about, right? They're about us feeling them and then releasing them into the atmosphere. And then we feel a lot better afterwards, even if it's just temporary. But in that moment, we're grounding ourselves, right? Releasing the tensions, releasing the air, and grounding ourselves in the present moment, so that we can now manage and control the emotions that are coming out. And so at this point, I don't want to carry, my anger into my 2 o'clock meeting. Let me take some moment and breathe through this. Sometimes it's important just to tell people, you know what, I need a moment. You're having a heated conversation. Things are getting overwhelmed. You're starting to be confused in the mind. You have no clarity. Things are spinning around and you're like, starting to say stuff that you shouldn't. You need to take a moment. You need to take a moment and you need to do some box breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, deep intentional breathings in and out, and start to let go and release the overwhelming feelings that you are experiencing, so that you can move forward in your day. Sometimes we allow one incident to overtake our entire day, that the rest of the day is now painful and horrible, when it should not be like that. Then I can take a moment to myself, do some breathing, and release all the negativity and the challenges that just happened, so that I can move into the next part of my day on a better note. Okay. So as an example, during moments of deep grief, one might naturally hold a breath, right? Or take shallow breaths. So sometimes I'm thinking about, when I get a shot, like I'll be holding my breath like, oh my God, I hate getting shots, right? Or when something painful is happening, or you become afraid, like you initially, and then you're not breathing, you're holding your breath. And it just seems like that's a natural thing for some reason that we end up doing when we are overwhelmed. So consciously shifting to slow, deep breaths will then allow the emotional energy to move through the body, rather than it becoming trapped in our bodies, right? And so instead of becoming overwhelmed and afraid and holding our breaths, we need to be intentional about recognizing when we do that, so that we can start breathing through those moments and not trapping that emotion within our bodies, and causing it to come out in painful ways, right? So it's important. And so this will prevent emotional buildup, which can lead to outbursts of emotional numbness. Like like sometimes somebody done went off and you're like, what is wrong with them? You know, it's not necessarily about what just happened in that moment. It could be that there's a lot of emotional buildup that that person, you or I, have not dealt with and has sat down to gain wisdom and clarity and allow our emotions to flow its course in a manageable and controlled way. Okay. So here's number three. Number three is spiritual and symbolic significance. Remember, we're talking about how the importance of breathing during grief can be understood in several levels. The first one was physical regulation, which is managing stress and anxiety. The second one we just talked about was emotional processing, allowing feelings to surface. And then here's the third one, spiritual and symbolic significance, which is connecting breath with life and renewal. Are you grieving and feel like you're struggling alone? You don't have to walk this path by yourself. Book a virtual session with Dr. Tammy Isaac at Breathe Grief Counseling Center. Visit us online at www.breathegriefcounselingcenter.com. Dr. Isaac will help you put your emotions into words. She'll help you reduce the feeling of isolation. She'll help you understand that everyone grieves differently and also help you prevent unhealthy coping mechanisms. Take control of your life with world-class counseling sessions today with Dr. Tammy Isaac. Breath is often seen as the essence of life. In many spiritual traditions, breathing represents a connection to something greater than ourselves, something like a divine force, the soul, the spirit. For many could be God, right? In the context of grief, breath can serve as a reminder that even in the midst of loss, life continues. When we think about in many different cultures and religions, breath is synonymous with life. For example, in the Christian tradition, God breathes life into Adam in Genesis 2:7, where it says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." So when we think about how God gives life to Adam and we think about it in the Eastern practices, the word breath is seen as a life energy force. So I started to think about this quote that jazz saxophonist John Coltrane once said. He said, "God breathes through us so completely, so gently, we hardly feel it, yet it is our everything." He says this in a way of reflecting and understanding of what he saw as the divine being present and being an inspiration in his everyday life, right? So by saying God breathes through us, Coltrane is, I believe, expressing the idea that life, creativity, and inspiration are not solely the human efforts, but they are infused with this divine energy, this divine life force, infused with this breath of God that flows through us. And though it flows through us, it is flowing so gently that we might not even recognize that it is flowing. You know, so many times you don't realize that you're breathing because it's autonomic, right? It just happens, right? And so I believe that's what Coltrane is expressing, that God is moving and working through us so often through our breath that we don't even know that he's there. But it is the very essence or the essential part. It is the core, he says, of who we are and how we live out life today. And so when we think about these Eastern practices and how they see breath as a life force or life energy, it's important to realize that once we focus on breathing with that thought pattern, grief can remind individuals that life persists. Life continues to go on even in the moments of deep sorrow, that there is still life flowing through us, though we have lost someone or something that we dearly love, and we have pain going through us. And so when we take time to breathe, and we have a religious belief or spiritual belief, then we can do some breathing exercises that will cause us to connect with God, which will bring us some comfort or even some guidance as we sit and allow breath to flow through us, right? Here's the other thing. Breath can symbolize renewal and resilience. So each breath represents the ability to start anew, right? To continue moving forward, even when the future feels uncertain. It also helps us to begin to be intentional about focusing on our breath, so that we are reminded that healing through our breathing is a continuous process, right? I love that idea because breathing is continuous, or has to be continuous, for us to have life, right? So when we think about breathing in an effort to control our grief, it helps us in the healing process. So if I'm going to continue to heal, I have to be reminded that it's important to breathe, or I remind myself it's important to breathe so that I can heal. So I very much love that analogy. Here's the fourth level: mindfulness and presence, grounded in the moment. So grief can often take people out of the present moment, which will pull them back into the past, memories of their loved ones, some regrets, some issues, some places you probably don't want to go, right? Or it can pull you into the past, but push you into the future, where you start to think about fears and how you will cope and what life will be like without that person. So this mental and emotional spiral really can exacerbate the feelings of grief, these feelings of helplessness or despair. So when we begin to do breathing exercises, breathing will bring us back to the very present moment, offering a grounding tool, right, for us. One of the things I think about when we talk about this mindfulness is Eckhart Tolle, who has the book called The Power of Now, I think it's called. And I read that and listened to his podcast, and he always talks about being present in the moment now. A lot of us get anxious, overwhelmed, and find ourselves in despair because we are outside of the moment that we're presently in, which means I start thinking about old things, old ways, and then I get worked up, get sad, or I'm thinking about the future, which that I have no idea what it's going to be like, but I'm making stories in my head. That's what Brene Brown would call it, the story I'm telling myself in my head. He talks about when we are in the present now, paying attention to now, it helps us out a whole lot. And so I'm thinking about that as we begin to breathe. Breathing is a grounding mechanism to bring me back into the present moment, because I have escaped or sent myself off into places that are not bringing me joy, right? Bringing me into memories that I don't want to cherish. And so it's important that we take a safe anchor, right? By breathing for the mind. We have to anchor ourselves. We need to help redirect thoughts away from overwhelming fears, overwhelming anxieties, right? So that's what breathing will do for us. And we call it, calling it mindful breathing, which it initiates or invites us to focus on sensations of our breath, its rhythm, the depth, the flow, thereby which will present us with calming, racing thoughts down, bringing our emotions from out of the turbulence into a calm presence. One of the things that I did when I started at UTNB was we did mindfulness Mondays for a while, where I would have people come in for about a 15-minute time span, and we would sit quietly. There would be a really calm music playing very softly in the background, and I will be guiding them through this meditation through a very soft spoken word and giving them instructions that will help them to be present in the now, where they would put their feet on the ground. They would take intentional breaths in and out to a slow pace and rhythm of the count that I was offering to them. And they were told to feel your feet on the ground, to feel your buttocks in the chair, and to feel your back up against the chair, to feel your fingers, to start to feel every part of their body, to start to recognize the breathing that they were doing, being intentional, to recognize the patternness of their breathing. And all of this was sort of a safe anchor, sort of bringing them into this place of calmness from throughout whatever was happening in their life or through the day. And so I very much appreciate these moments of mindfulness and breathing. And I often do this for myself, because I listen to a lot of people throughout the day. I listen to their stories. Some are tragic. I'm dealing with people who have illnesses and very overwhelmed, who don't have very good social lives, right? And so I hear a lot of despair throughout the day, and I pull back. I will go to my office, close the door, and I'll do some breathing. I do that before I go out to visit patients, before I start to interact. I take those moments to myself. When I leave work, before I leave out the parking lot, I usually sit in my car in a while just to ground myself. Sometimes if I'm just out at the store, one time I went, it might have been the holidays, because I was just like, why is Home Goods so filled with people? Oh my God. It was so overwhelming. I felt anxious. I had to come out of the store, go back to my car, do some breathing, and decide, was that a best option for me to go into the store at that time? And so I believe that when we do this mindfulness breathing, it is like a safe anchor for us to kind of ground us back into the very present moment that we are in. And let's end with this last one. Number 5, self-care and resilience, building strength through breathing. So grief is an exhausting process that will deplete our mental, emotional, and physical energy. It just will. It can leave people feeling disconnected from their bodies and overwhelmed by their emotions, because some of these emotions that you're feeling, you probably haven't felt before, right? And it can cause our conscious breathing actually will serve as a simple yet powerful form of self-care that can help us. So it's important that we do pay attention to the moments that we are feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling depleted. I'm feeling exhausted. I'm feeling like I can't move forward. I'm feeling like I can't go into Home Goods right now. We want to be intentional about being conscious about the way that we feel. So it's important that you pay attention to your body so that you can know what I need to be doing, and how breathing at this point can help create moments of pause and rest. So when we do pause, when we do mindful, or even when I came out of Home Goods that day and went into my car, what I'm doing is creating moments of pause and rest. When I'm seeing patients all day and I decide, okay, after so many patients, let me go back to my office and sit. I am being conscious of how I'm feeling. And then I create a moment for pause and rest. Now, listen, this is important to be conscious of the way that you're feeling. This means I have to pay attention to my actions and my attitudes, how I respond to things, right? So if I'm normally very chipper and then all of a sudden I'm kind of short, then I need to pay attention to that, which means that I probably need to pull back and create some space and time so that I can pause and rest by breathing. And when we begin to breathe, it relaxes the body. I believe we talked about that a little bit early in the podcast, that it loosens the tension in our body and removes the stress so that we can feel rested and that we can feel like we can go on with the rest of our day after that. So remember, in the midst of grieving, taking time to breathe deeply gives the mind and the body a break from the intensity of the emotions, right? We got to give ourselves a break. If I'm out there lifting weights and we're doing these workouts, there are moments of pause and rest that you take that the trainer will say, okay, you got a 10-second rest. Why? We're resting our body so that we can move forward with the next event. This is the same thing when it comes to our breathing, our anxiousness, our anxiety, and our grief. When things become overwhelmed, when I'm feeling a little bit too emotional right now, I need to take a moment. And I always tell people, when you do this, you honor your emotions, you honor your feelings, and you honor the love that you have for that person by taking a break and allowing your body to be relieved from the intensity of the emotions that you have going on right now. Even if it's just for a few moments, you want to focus on your breathing and help reduce the stress that is within your body so that you can regain your composure. Also, breathing exercises serve as a portable self-care. So I was talking to a patient's wife this morning who's very overwhelmed but also feels the sense of having to be by her husband's side while he's here in the hospital. There's nobody else that she feels like can take that responsibility. And while I do understand that, I related to her that it's important that she does some self-care. If she's going to be here, find ways to navigate and to include self-care while she's here with her husband. And one of the things that I did suggest is some breathing. This morning, I told her about box breathing and giving her some information on how to take moments and be mindful and do some meditation. She's a believer, so she can use the breath prayer and use phrases from the Bible of her belief, and do that while she's breathing so that she can have that self-care while she's also caring for her husband. And I think this is important too for a lot of caregivers who are caring for patients and loved ones who are sick and on their way to the end of life, because you forget how to take care of yourself because you're so engrossed in taking care of the other person. So it's important that it's just like they say on an airplane, put your mask on first before you can put the other person's mask on. So you got to find ways to have self-care. And so I like the fact that breathing can be what we call a portable self-care tool that you can take wherever you go. And over time, as you incorporate mindful breathing practices into your daily routine, it helps to build emotional resilience. I love that, right? Sometimes first of all, let me just say this. I believe all of us are emotional, men and women. We are all emotional. Why? Because we were created with emotions from God. Now, balancing our emotion and having emotional resistance is a different thing, right? Because sometimes we can be overwhelmed in our emotions because we don't have any strength or resilience around it. And so we bleed in certain areas of our emotions more than we really should. So all of us need to be able to have some emotional resilience. So each breath becomes a reminder that while the grief may be very overwhelming, that you have the strength to continue. So every breath that you take is reminding you, it should be reminding you that I can continue. Why? Because every time you breathe, it's sustaining life. Because we can't have life without breath, right? So every time I breathe, it's reminding me that life still exists. It's reminding me that I still have strength to continue the process. And the more I do that, it strengthens my mental capacity and my emotional stability. It is a tool that teaches us to be able to move through grief one breath at a time. Because you only breathe one breath at a time. You can pant, you can try to breathe as fast as you can, but you only breathe one breath at a time. And that's how we should be navigating through our grief, one breath at a time, right? So, as we close out this podcast, it was a little longer today, by focusing on the interplay of grief and breathing, we can offer ourselves a compassionate perspective on how something so simple as breathing can have a profound impact on our healing journey of grief. See how simple breathing is, and we don't realize the impact that breathing has on our lives, right? Through our journey of grief. So we talked about today the different levels that we can experience breathing as a tool through our grief. One was physical regulation, which is managing our stress and anxiety. 2 was emotional processing, allowing our feelings to surface. 3 was our spiritual and symbolic significance, where we connect our breath with life and renewal. 4 was mindfulness and presence, grounding in the moment. And 5 was self-care and resilience, building strength through breathing. I hope that you guys enjoyed this podcast. And as you leave from this session today, that you would take some time to do some breathing exercises every day, even if it's for a few minutes or even throughout the day, that you will begin to realize how much better you feel and how much clarity you receive, and how you realize that breath and breathing is one step at a time. It is healing for your journey. It is clarity. It is peace. It is your strength. It is your very existence, though something in your life has been lost and caused you deep sorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Permission to Breathe podcast. I hope today created space for you to breathe and find peace on your journey. I invite you to join me again next Monday for another episode as we continue to navigate this path together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share the podcast. Until next time, take care and keep breathing unapologetically.